Yes, welcome in. Another episode of The Swing. It is officially March, Jesse. How excited are you?
I'm so excited. It's my favorite time of the year. It's like Christmas.
It is. We've got a lot of basketball to be played over the next month as we get closer to crowning a national champion in the first week of April down in San Antonio. Will the Badgers be there? Who knows? But we've got a lot to talk about before we even think about that, as Wisconsin went on the road last weekend on Sunday and lost at Michigan State, and then came home and then went on the road again on Wednesday and took care of Minnesota for a ninth straight time. Going to dive into both of those games. Also going to get to play a little overreaction or no. And a lot of these questions are user submitted this time, which I love. If you come up with an overreaction or no question, it's getting answered. Ask your question as an overreaction or no, and it's going to get answered. So
we appreciate your dedication to the show.
We do. And I love that people get the segment too, right? So even though sometimes the co-host doesn't always understand what I'm saying and how I'm trying to get it across, but yeah, it's all good. But Wisconsin goes, as I said, goes to Michigan State. Didn't go the way that they wanted to, and they fall there, and their Big Ten championship hopes, regular season hopes, die there, and also put their double bye chances in a little bit of jeopardy as well, as they need some help at whether you want to be an Illinois fan or you want to be a who's a Northwestern fan, having Purdue or Maryland lose and Wisconsin beat Penn State, then they would get that double bye. But let's start with Michigan State. And it was a game in which the Badgers didn't shoot it great. I feel like that's safe to say there. Is that fair?
That is an accurate assessment of what transpired.
Okay. Good. Because I didn't think 15.3% from three was good, but I needed a little confirmation from the guy who played college basketball.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the guy who shot 15.3% in college. Not far
off. Yeah, again, it wasn't good. And it was a second half where Michigan State took control. Wisconsin, though, was right there, right? It was 58-57, and they just could not get over that hump. And they had some turnovers, had some missed shots. They just couldn't get over the hump. And then Michigan State obviously was able to take back control and win, not going away by any stretch, but take that game and keep their Big Ten hopes alive. And they're already claimed now a share of the Big Ten, and they can go for the win if they can claim it by themselves, I believe, if they beat Michigan coming up this weekend too. Michigan State's a good team. I will give credit to Michigan State. I think they've got a good defense, especially, half court wise. They are a beast on the offensive glass. That was a significant issue for Wisconsin. But I would usually, just based on what we saw all season, take a lot of those shots. And so would Greg Gard. I think he said 26 or 27 of the 32 threes that they took were shots that he was just fine with.
This is the thing about this Wisconsin team, and I know we'll get into this in more detail because we get asked this every week about what could derail Wisconsin's chances. But the way this team is constructed this year is completely different from what we've come to know Wisconsin basketball. And we've discussed this, but the three-point shot is such a foundational piece of this offense, to the point that they're taking and making more threes than any Wisconsin team since the three-point line came into existence in college basketball in 1987. I bring all that up to say 32 three-point shots is not crazy, considering they've been taking about 27. The problem is you only made 5. So this is going to be a team, as we get into the NCAA tournament, that you can expect to continue to make those threes. It just happened to be a day in a very difficult environment where almost none of them went in. And I would argue that if you played Michigan State 50 times, 49 out of those 50, you would not have John Blackwell, John Tonje, and Kamari McGee combined to go 1 for 19. McGee was shooting 50+% this season. It had been a real revelation. And Blackwell and Tonje have been the two best scorers on the team. Even if the three-point shot hasn't always been great in every game, those two guys were 1 for 14. So the fact they were still in it at the end speaks to the ability to do some other things well. But that game does give a little bit of cause for concern because you lost in much the same way. Losing at home, blowing a 15-point second half lead in the last 6 minutes a couple weeks ago gives you a little bit of cause for concern. But on the whole, if you get good shots with this Wisconsin team, it seems like from what we've seen the totality of this season, they should be okay.
They should be if we're taking the totality of the season, but that's not how basketball usually works, right?
That's the problem.
December, as I said before, and I know it matters in the standings, but it's like the Michigan game doesn't matter at this point. Who cares? When we were talking about who was the best team, this was a couple weeks ago when Michigan, before they fell flat on their face, the things in December don't really matter. January doesn't really matter. What you did in February doesn't really matter. It matters how you're playing in March. And while, yes, we are not going to overreact to a 5 for 32 performance, when you return with a 5 for 22 performance the next time, and you are shooting 24% from three in the last 4 games, I think that at least makes you want to think about it for at least a minute. But here's the thing. Wisconsin had these type of these type of shooting slump, I guess you would call it, in December. And I was like, I don't know if you can keep on shooting all these threes if you're not going to make them. They kept on shooting them, and eventually they ended up going down. But this is a different time. You've got a guaranteed 3 games left. That's all you've got. You've got Saturday against Penn State, you got Big Ten tournament, and you've got the NCAA tournament. Those are the 3 chances you have. And if you come up against a team that's shooting it well, or, better than you are, you're obviously going to be in trouble like Michigan State. Like Michigan State didn't shoot it great. I mean, they did hit 9, and I think they were 9 for 27, I believe, which was better than their season average. But if Wisconsin shoots its average in that Michigan State game, they wouldn't go away. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm concerned because we've seen these kind of stretches earlier in the year, but it's March, man, and that has to at least give you pause.
Yes, that's what I meant by totality of the season. I should have just worded it more simply in that if you shoot to what the average has been this year, they should be okay. But as we've seen very recently, many Marches come up, you have a poor stretch, and it's extremely difficult to overcome when all you have left is 40 minutes of basketball. And, the game against James Madison last year is going to stick with us because it's the last time we saw him in the NCAA tournament. That was a team that for long stretches was doing some things that previous Wisconsin teams hadn't in terms of scoring, and then kind of fell off a cliff. But that was in January. And this team is built a little bit differently. They've certainly played a little bit differently. But obviously, if you have some poor stretches in the postseason, it can bite you very quickly. So they've been able to overcome that and not have those kinds of games more often than not. But if that does happen, certainly is capable of being problematic.
I mean, I think you look at a couple of guys that were shooting better than they ever had in their entire life. They're better than they had since coming to Wisconsin. It was Carter Gilmore and Kamari McGee. They've gone cold of late. John Tonje, who was on an absolute heater, really, really struggled against Michigan State, and then obviously was in foul trouble, but went 2 or 3 from 3 against Minnesota. And then John Blackwell, who hit, I think it was 4 or 6 against Washington, came back last night against Minnesota, and he was really good against Michigan State, and he scored a bunch of points last night against Minnesota, but he also went 2 for 10 from 3. So, I think, was it 2 for 9 or 2 for 10? 2 for 9 from 3. So, like, they're still finding a way to put up points like they did last night. 74 is what it is. The 61 is the lowest they've had this year against Michigan State. But they won last night, and I think we probably should tip our hats to them for that. But when it comes to March, because of what we've seen in the past, I'm not freaking out. I'm not pushing that panic button. I'm just saying we've seen it before.
It just sticks
because let's be fair. Cold shooting by any team is going to get them knocked out of the tournament. It's not just Wisconsin. Everyone could go back through their entire NCAA history and find, this is what this happened then, and that's why they didn't make it. And that's going to be the case for most teams. And Wisconsin's no different.
Yeah, and the results in the NCAA tournament are the ones that stick with you. And since this is a team that has high potential and they haven't, as a group, gotten out of the first weekend in 8 years now, the ghosts of March Madness kind of creep up if you're a fan, if you cover this program. But they've put themselves in a real great position as we get to the last game of the regular season.
They have. You just hate that they lost that Oregon game because now they don't have the double bye in their control, right? They would have a game. They'd be a game up on both Purdue and Maryland, and it wouldn't matter what those other two teams did as long as Wisconsin won on Saturday and beat Penn State. The Badgers would be the third seed, or I guess, yeah, the third seed, assuming Michigan were to lose, and they would tie, and Michigan would have the tiebreaker there. But they didn't. They didn't beat Oregon, and now they're looking at the possibility of having to play on that opening Thursday. And I don't think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it like if you're to lose that game, does it knock you down? Does it knock you down a seed line? Maybe. I don't know.
If you're a 5 and you lose the opener on a Thursday, I think it's certainly possible, especially when the best case scenario here is maybe you're 3 seed, maybe a 2, and you're in Milwaukee. Like, does it bump you out of even playing in Milwaukee? It depends how some of the shuffling goes with some of these other teams. But I did want to ask, just can you explain the tiebreaker of where we're at right now as we get to this stage? Because there's a 3-way tie for third place with Maryland, Purdue, and Wisconsin. All 3 teams are 13-6. So if all 3 of them end up in a 3-way tie,
it's my understanding it's the record against the next highest team. So it would be against Michigan, and Wisconsin is obviously 0-1 against Michigan. And I think Purdue beat Michigan. Again, my understanding of it is it's a round robin of like the teams from Michigan. The other 2 teams beat Michigan. I think Purdue went 1-1 against Michigan. Maryland beat Michigan, and Wisconsin did not. So I think that's the tiebreaker. Is if it's still tied, like between the 3 teams, you do a round robin. They all went 1-1 against each other, right? Purdue, Maryland, and Wisconsin, and then it's the next record against the next highest opponent, which would be Michigan. Now, if Michigan falls into, if they lose to Michigan State on whatever day they play Saturday, and they drop into, and the other 3 teams win, it's 14-6. All 4 teams are 14-6. Wisconsin's out of that as well because it's a round robin among those 3 teams. And Wisconsin went 1-2 against them, so they can't afford to tie with anybody. They need Purdue to lose. They need Purdue or Maryland to lose. And of the 2, Purdue seems the more likely one because they have to go to Illinois, which just dominated Michigan the other day by 20. Did they play it last night or they played tonight? Illinois? Do you know?
Can't help you out there. I'm leaving you hanging.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, so they're actually, they're playing good ball of late. They beat Michigan by 20. They beat Iowa by 20. So since getting blown up by Wisconsin and Duke, they've kind of come back around because they're getting healthy. Wisconsin, they could do Wisconsin a huge favor by beating Purdue on, I think it's tomorrow night they actually play. So Wisconsin will know whether they're playing for a double bye or not by the time they take the court on Saturday. So, or I should say whether a win would get them the double bye because Purdue will have played the night before. So, yes, the tiebreakers are not great for Wisconsin. Is what it is. But yeah, the double bye is necessary in. I shouldn't say necessary. It's very good, I would say, for Wisconsin seeding in the NCAA tournament because you're not potentially going to fall to a lower seeded team, whoever it may be, and you just get straight to the quarterfinals. And if you were to win that, I feel like your seed is pretty established. If you were to win that and get to Saturday.
The other thing is you don't have to log 40 additional minutes. And I know there's some discussion, as there is every year, about how many games do you really want to play? Because if you make the Big Ten tournament title, which we saw a year ago, Badgers had a great run and then lost that game. You obviously have less time to recover. You're either going to play on a Thursday or a Friday. So these guys would say you want to win as many games as you possibly can. And I agree with that. But it'll be fun to see how it all ends up.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the Michigan State game
Yep.
and what went wrong there. But going back to Minnesota, the Badgers, played a solid first half, had a double-digit lead in the second half, and gave it up. And it was 55-53 Minnesota, and the Badgers won an 8-2 run and got it done. And Greg Gard actually mentioned the defense as they got some stops, and then it led to some other stuff at the other end. But I think Wisconsin's second halves, if you go back and look at some of the, not plus minus, but the some of the second halves that haven't gone well. Michigan State was -11. Oregon was -16 between the second half and overtime. They were great against Illinois, great against Purdue. Maryland was -7. UCLA was -7. Ohio State was -15. They were right there with Minnesota. I mean, it was basically even with Minnesota. But the second half of games have been a bit of a struggle at times. They haven't necessarily put teams away. Like the Oregon game should have been put away. They had a double-digit lead. They had a chance to put their boot on their throat and didn't do it. And that's why you lose that game. So do you have any concern there look, I like that they're bounced back against Minnesota, right? They give up the lead. They don't overreact. They don't freak out. They just keep playing and get it done and come back and get that win. But are you at all, do you point to that? I don't know why we're doing this. They beat Minnesota, but here we are figuring out, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
I was going to try to get us back on track to the positive here because we're a little deep into this show. Yeah, I mean, certainly the blown second half opportunities are just part of the story of this team and stick with you. And if something does happen in the NCAA tournament, you can point to that and say, okay, look what happened. But I do think that Wisconsin deserves tremendous credit for what it was able to do down the stretch against Minnesota. Yeah, I get that the Gophers aren't a great team, but the barn was absolutely nuts. The Gophers finally take the lead. It's the first time they've had a lead since it was 3-2. And this Minnesota team was in a spot where they're fighting just to get into the Big Ten tournament because this is unique now this year because only the top 15 get in. So there was everything on the line for them and everything going against Wisconsin. The Badgers don't have Max Klesmit, who's out for another game. So their rotation is much different. And they're able to get it done down the stretch. And I think that says a lot about this team and what it's capable of. Forget the fact that Minnesota isn't a very good team. Like, I get it. And also, that was a very challenging spot, and you had a lot of different players step up. I think Jack Janicki, we don't talk about him enough. It's not like the numbers are going to be huge, but he gives you 6 points. They're all huge late, and Wisconsin is able to get out of there to even be in the position where they're having this discussion that it's a three-way tie for third place in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I would agree. So when I said it was 55-53, right? And Minnesota feeling good about himself. You said the barn was wild. My understanding was like based on what we could hear on the TV broadcast, maybe like 50-50. Wisconsin and Minnesota. So yeah, it was crazy, but it probably wasn't as crazy it would have been if Minnesota had actually. It was a sellout. Good job on that, I guess, Minnesota. But when half the stadium is Wisconsin fans, it's maybe a pretty nice environment. If the visiting team, but 55-53, they get a John Blackwell layup, 2 Carter Gilmore free throws, 2 more Carter Gilmore free throws, and then they back-to-back Jack Janicki buckets to make it 63-58. Carter Gilmore, Jack Janicki, 2 guys that probably didn't think we'd be talking about at this point in March when we're looking back towards the beginning of the season. And Carter's been a story all year with what he's been able to do. And Jack, when he's been called upon, has really, really stepped up. You think about the Purdue game when Kamari McGee got ejected. Michigan State, he was okay, but against Minnesota, he was great, especially down the stretch. And he lost a tooth.
Yeah. Welcome to the Big Ten.
Half of a tooth.
It's his role was a little bit different now because Klesmit's out of the lineup. So you got McGee in the starting lineup, and now your backcourt is different. Like he's one of the first subs in now, and I just think he's so steady. Like again, the numbers aren't going to be huge, but think about the buckets that he made. He's at the top of the key, breaks someone down, he gets to the rim and scores, and then the fadeaway from the left side of the floor, high degree of difficulty, and makes a real good cut and is at the rim and scores. Wisconsin deserves, I think, a lot of credit too for. This is maybe an underrated aspect here of this team, but the cutting ability, and Blackwell is at the top of the list. A lot of those buckets, you talk about how he goes 2 for 9 from 3 or, doesn't shoot great from the outside. Well, how is he scoring? By cutting off the ball and McGee finding him, other people finding him. Like that was a huge difference in that game. So you're right. We have not talked a lot about Jack Janicki, but there's a reason why he's been in this rotation all year. And he rose to the challenge when he was required to play more minutes because of Max Klesmit's injury.
It was funny going back to media day. I was looking at this the other day because when Jack is playing more, it just reminds me of it every time, is when I was talking to John Blackwell on Media Day and was asking, what do you think about some of these new guys that are coming in, whether it was Tanji or Cam Hunter or Daniel Freitag or whoever it may be. And he's like, yeah, those guys are good. But I think Jack Janicki is going to jump up and grab people and surprise the hell out of them. And he's like, well, I'm a little biased because he's my roommate, but I think he's going to play a big role. And I was like, okay, dude. All right. I guess. But he's been huge for them. The Purdue game was significant. And last night was significant in what he's able to give them. And he is, I'm just going to say he's an underrated athlete. I know the connotations that come along with that. But what he did, what game was that where he slammed it on some dude on the fast break? Whatever it was, I was like, whoo, didn't know that. He's a great athlete. When I say underrated, you know what I'm saying.
Is that the Shaq gif?
Yes. Yeah. I was not familiar with your game. I apologize. Yeah, he has been a definite punch to that offense for sure. And the fact that he did it in front of his hometown, I guess, home state. He had 30 family and friends there. All the Minnesota guys, I thought Steve McCrowell played well, especially early on. I mean, the fact that they're getting beat by Minnesota guys is probably got to kill Minnesota fans just even a little bit more. So stick the dagger in a little bit further. But they beat Minnesota 9 straight times. It's the longest streak by either team in this series since the 1970s. So when I think Minnesota won like 15 or 16 straight, but they needed the win. They got the win.
Yeah, it's been since February 2020. How many years has it been that Wisconsin has finished ahead of Minnesota in the Big Ten standings?
That's a Torvik stat that I'm going to have to go find real quickly because he posted every year, right? Like that's his thing. And where is it?
We don't have to answer it right now.
No, I need the answer right now, Jesse. Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, Minnesota has been tormented by the Badgers with Minnesota players forever. So you can go down the list. The all Minnesota team on Wisconsin's team, I would love to see what that matchup would be against the all Minnesota team on Minnesota's team.
Like this year?
No, just like
all time?
Over time. Yeah.
Who would that? I mean, Jordan Taylor, John Lure, Jared Bergeron.
You'd have some
Nate Reavers, Brad Davison,
Mike Bruzewitz, Stephen Crowell, obviously.
Stephen Crowell, Nolan Winter, Jack Janicki. Was Cam Taylor from there?
That I don't remember, but
I thought Cam. He might have been there from there.
Tyler Wall.
You
could just take Lakeville guys.
Yeah, Cam Taylor was from there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Just take Lakeville North guys. There's been a lot of them. I think that's a good number.
Daniel Freitag.
Was that a little surprised to see him in there late? Did you see that late? He got in. I think after Janicki broke his tooth. They threw him in there for like the last 7 seconds.
Cam Hunter got in there in a regular, like important spot too,
and very quickly
then promptly came out.
Yeah, promptly came out, and I don't understand why. It's not like he gave up. Not like his defense was struggling at all. His defense is struggling at all, a little bit. But those guys, yeah, I mean, the only transfer that's, I guess, Xavier Amos as well, but obviously Tanji is where it at. I know we're missing. I guarantee we're missing somebody Minnesota-wise, and people are going to kill us for it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Won't be the first time or the last. So either way, big win for the Badgers.
I just hate the obvious ones that I'm definitely missing. Is the problem for me? All right, let's get into a little overreaction or no. I love that picture. Don't you love that? Don't you love that picture of Jack Janicki missing half of his front tooth? Did you ever have that happen to you? Ever get lose like an elbow?
I did not lose a tooth. I had a tooth go through my lip and split it, and I had to get stitches. I still have a scar there. That was from practice before my senior season in college. So you should wear a mouthpiece. Highly recommended. The problem is it's real hard to talk with one of those in your mouth.
Right, and you look stupid too.
Yeah, there's that. Or you could just end up looking like all the hockey players.
So playing basketball, maybe like this was back in high school, playing basketball. I got at this local health club in Middleton, this tall, white, lanky, white guy with the sharpest elbows you've ever seen in your entire life. Just boom, right to the mouth, and broke one of my front teeth in half.
Ooh.
And and was able to pick it up, go to the dentist, have it put back on, but that tooth eventually died. It was bad. It was bad. And I've also had teeth go through my lip as well.
I had a high school.
That was when I was a kid.
I had a high school teammate. I think it is 2 front teeth knocked out, and he has to this day. I think it's like a retainer thing that you put in, and when you take it out, you see there's no teeth there. So dangerous sport.
He never got permanent teeth in that thing?
I don't know. It's been a while, but
okay.
For the longest time, it was just a thing you would put in there. So
that'd be unfortunate.
I'm sure Janicki has great dental coverage, though.
One of the questions was from Nuclear Patrick, like, does he pay for that, or does the UW pay for that? I don't have an answer to that question.
UW does. I hope there's some policy.
I feel like he's got health insurance through that, right? But I mean, he's also under 25, so he could still be on his parents too. I don't know. We don't need to go into this. It's ridiculous. Where are those? All right. Overreaction or no? They could not make it. Wisconsin could not make it out of the opening weekend without a mostly healthy version of Max Klesmit.
Great question. I'm going to say that is not an overreaction. I think they absolutely need him, not necessarily for the first round game, but the second round game. And I guess I go back to the Iowa State game just because it's most prominent. If you get to the second round, you're going to play, if not a Power 4 school, a team that is, barring some crazy upset, pretty good. And I think you just need your regular rotation of guys. Now, they were able to get it done against Minnesota. I would just feel better if he's in there. The problem is, how healthy would Max be in that situation, and how much can he give you? Because let's be realistic. He was honest with us when he came on the show. It's been extremely frustrating for him all season because he just has not been able to be 100%. So we don't know if he is healthy enough, how close he would be. And if he can't give you the best version of Max, like, is that detrimental to the team? So we don't know the answer to that. But if you had a healthy Max, that'd be great.
Yeah. Again, he was wearing the boot on Sunday at Michigan State. The walking boot, was not wearing it last night at Minnesota. So at least you feel a little bit better about that. Like, I don't think it was ever going to be a long-term thing. He just didn't want to sit out to let it heal, right? He missed the first Minnesota game, and Cam McGee came in and started that game and played pretty well, but he just had never got that thing back to 100% or anywhere close to it. And I think this is why he's sitting out now, to be able to be good to go when the postseason starts. You'd much rather have him for that than for anything else. But I think they need all hands on deck. This is a team that has not been to the second weekend of the tournament in 8 years, as you said. They need all hands on deck. It doesn't matter who they're playing, when they're playing, where they're playing. Get everybody that you possibly can have on the floor and ready to go, because you're going to need them. And you don't take it like we used to take. I feel like we used to take just getting to the Sweet 16 for granted, because they did it so many times under Bo and so many times in the first couple of years, under Greg. You just took it for granted, and now it's been 8 years. You don't take it for granted anymore. You know how tough it is, and we'll see if they're able to do it. But I think they do need a healthy Max to do it. So we'll see. Overreaction or no? Jack Janicki is your 2025-26 starting point guard.
Overreaction.
Okay.
I think that's next year, right? Man,
years
go fast. I think it'll be John Blackwell, unless there's a transfer portal guy or something like that. I mean, I know we've been asked that too about Blackwell in winter, but I think it's an overreaction to say it'll be Janicki. But he's doing everything to prove that he has a future here, a long-term future in the rotation.
Overreaction or no? Best case scenario for the team that seems banged up is to win one game in the Big Ten tournament, then lose in the semifinals. Secure a 3 seed and get to rest Sunday. This is assuming that they get the double bye, which is very far from an assumption.
So this is the annual debate, right? About how far should you go? What's the best situation? I guess I'll say I agree with that, because again, with where they're at, I was looking at Bracket Matrix, by the way, which is a real great website to go to because it incorporates every projection that's out there, every NCAA tournament projection. So you really get a good feel of where teams stand overall. Wisconsin's average seed is, I want to say like 2.59, something like that, a little over 2.5, which means in basically every bracket, they're either a 2 or a 3. There's maybe a handful where they're a 4. So that's the baseline right now. And if you get the double bye and you win that first game, let's say they beat Penn State, first of all, that puts you at 24-7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or 25-7.
No, they'd be 24-7, beating Penn State because they're 23-7 now, I believe.
Right. So if you win that first game, you're 25-7. You're 25-8. I feel like that ought to be good enough for a 3 seed and potentially a spot in Milwaukee. And the extra couple days rest wouldn't be such a bad thing because if you are in Milwaukee, that's a Friday, Sunday situation. So you got an extra day. Yes. Well, I'll be there no matter what. But on the other hand, kind of like to, if you have a rooting interest in the Badgers, you don't want to see them go out in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. But it depends. Every year it depends. Is it better if you make a deep run and you build confidence? Is it better if you have a couple extra days? So it's hard to say.
I think you go as far as you can go. I mean, it's you haven't won a Big Ten title since 2022, like regular season title. You haven't won a Big Ten tournament title since 2015. So it's been a minute. They've been in the finals twice, I believe, since then. They I think the other one was out when it was in DC. I think they were in the finals. I think that was the year, one of the years they went to the Sweet 16, and then obviously last year against Illinois. So yeah, you want to win titles. Like you play basketball to win titles. You play basketball to win games. And if you're certainly a competitor, you want to do that. Now, that said, I understand where people are coming from because we know that Big Ten tournaments in the long run don't really matter. The NCAA tournament matters. And that's where you're going to be remembered, whether you win or you lose. That's what's going to be remembered from a season usually. Not how far you went in a Big Ten tournament, even though we know our most recent example or our most recent thoughts about the Big Ten tournament is Wisconsin making the run that they did. But
and then what happened?
That's the thing. Like, we thought they were playing great basketball, right? We thought that they had gone in that steady decline through January and February. And then all of a sudden they show up in Minneapolis and run off 3 straight games, including a team that would end up playing for the national title. And then you have James Madison happen. So I don't know that it means a ton, but if you're a player or if you're a coach, you want to win championships, and they haven't done that for a while when it comes to the Big Ten tournament. So I can understand where they're coming from, and they certainly are going to play to potentially win a title. All right, let's jump into some listener questions. We'll start with this one. And this is kind of a max question that we were just talking about, but Witness the West. Could Klesmit play if the tournament started tomorrow and our coaches essentially resting him to prep for the NCAAs? Or is this something that could essentially be season ending? It's not going to be season ending, but do you think that they're holding him out for the long term?
I guess it's hard to know, but at this point, I would think so. I mean, it's senior day, so you want to be a part of that. And also, there are bigger fish to fry at this point. So that's a tough thing to do and try and figure out. But
yeah,
it's the best time to get healthy. It's the only time to get healthy.
Yeah, I think it was John Rothstein yesterday, having talked to one of the communication folks for UW, that said they expect Max back on Saturday for senior day. We'll see. But should he play? I think that's maybe another question. But it always reminds me of Paul Christ and being like, you just never know when your last game is going to be your last game. And so we want those guys to play as much as they possibly can, right? Like, we're not going to hold guys out because if they're healthy enough to play, they're going to play. If they're not 100%, they're not 100%. But if they're healthy enough to play, they're going to play, because you just never know how many games you're going to get past that. So if you're Max and this is the end of your senior year, this is the end of your college career, well, yeah, I want to play as many games as possible. And that's probably why he didn't allow himself to get totally healthy with that ankle, and why it's been nagging him throughout the entire year, or since it happened, I should say. So, all right. Sam asks, are you surprised even a little that the offense took this much of a dip without Max? Last 2 games between the lack of scoring and good passing and the increase in turnovers have been glaring, and Max wasn't even having that great of a season.
Well, I think there's multiple factors at play. First of all, it speaks to the things Max can do well, even if he's not shooting it well. And he was still averaging around double figures. So it's not like he disappeared completely. But also, I mean, Michigan State in that environment, Michigan State's a good team. They missed open shots. It doesn't matter who's on the floor. So I don't know what to make of that. Like, I don't know if this is a team that should only average 67 points a game because Max isn't on the floor. But obviously, he's been a starter, a multi-year starter. And when you don't have a guy like that, it changes the dynamics of the rotation. And people have different roles that they haven't really necessarily had to do a ton throughout the year.
Yes, agreed. And, it's not as if he was blame free in what happened against Oregon in terms of the turnovers, because that's throwing a ball off somebody's knee is not the ideal place to put a pass with 17 seconds left. Not taking shots. I'm just saying that is obviously what it is. Before we go any further, the turnovers thing, they had 9 last night in the first half. It continues, and it feels like, and again, you probably could go back and look at the numbers. It feels like more often than not, the turnovers are heavy in the first half and then fade in the second half. That's exactly what happened last night. They had 9 turnovers in the first half, just 2 in the second. The Oregon game's a little bit different.
Yes,
they spread those out. They spread those out over the entire game there. But for the most part, it feels like they lock in. They're I don't know, locked in too fast. I don't understand why do you think so many of them are happening in the first half and then they kind of go away in the second?
I don't have a good explanation for it. You could argue that it takes some time to get a feel for a game, but like that first half was so messy against Minnesota, and I didn't feel like it was all Minnesota. Like, there were some situations, especially against Oregon, where it's like, okay, look at the pressure, look at the length. Obviously, some of these are self-inflicted mistakes, but with Minnesota, it was just, why are you making that pass cross court?
Right.
Try and throw it to Tanji 35 feet from one sideline to the other, and just things like that. So I don't have a good explanation, but again, if we go back to what could derail Wisconsin, the 3-point shooting and this flurry of turnovers that seems to pop up sometimes, it's not a great combination, but as I've said many times, this team is built in a way to overcome those because it can play faster and have better tempo and score more points. You just don't want to be in that spot if you get to the tournament.
Absolutely not. With Klesmit out, is the optimal starting lineup Janicki, Crowell, Winter, Tanji, Blackwell, with McGee coming out off the bench to be an Energizer bunny? Or excuse me, with McGee going back to being an Energizer bunny off the bench?
I don't think so. I know McGee didn't give you much offensively, but what did he have? 5 assists, no turnovers. I think against Minnesota, and he played 30 minutes.
Take your word for it.
So
he had 5. He had 5 assists, no turnovers in 32 minutes.
That's what you want out of a point guard, to distribute the ball, to not give things away. I know Janicki, like we talked about, he had those 6 points. I don't have a problem with what they're doing right now, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think the Kamari plus minus for a single game is, I don't know how relevant it is, but Kamari was minus 17 against Michigan State, and his shooting has fallen off a bit from the outside, not because he's missing from the corner. He's missing from the wing. I don't know why his shot just looks different up there. I don't know why it does. It just looks different from when he's shooting on that side, when he's shooting up the wing as opposed to the corner. It just looks different. And I don't know if that is actually different or if it's just the way I'm seeing it when he's shooting it, but he needs to get back in the corner. and that's where you're taking your threes instead of some of the ones that I think that he forced. I need to get a look at his shot chart because I feel like almost all his 3-point makes are from the corner. Probably.
Feels like it.
Yeah. All right. Continuing on here. What are the flaws you see in this team in matchups that could make them an early exit in the tournament? And I think we've gone over these a little bit, but I'll let you just break it down. Actually, give me a top 3 with the most troublesome, or go 3, 2, 1 with the most troublesome being at the top.
I'll put 3 the turnovers because we've seen it sometimes, but not every time. I think 2, the 3-point shooting, because again, this is a roster and a team that's built on shots at the rim, but 3-point shots. You can expect them to take 27 plus in probably every game here on out. Maybe it's a few less than 27. Those are the 2 that have consistently come up. And then I think about matchups specifically. It's our favorite word in March. We talked about it before the James Madison game, because I remember looking at that bracket going, "Oh no," for Wisconsin. It was a team that had won 30 some games or something.
Yeah.
But I think teams that have the ability to make it difficult for Wisconsin in those other 2 areas, like if you face a team that is very long, athletic, and quick and can pressure you, I think that can be problematic. So maybe that's only 2.5 because that sort of feeds into the other 2 things. But that's kind of how I think about it right now. And I'm not sure that there's a specific type of player or players in general that I think will beat Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament. I do think a lot of it is about Wisconsin itself.
Okay. I feel like this may just be a joke because it happens. We hear about it every single time Wisconsin plays. But Derek says, what is the record for the NCAA's men's basketball team free throw percentage?
Well, okay. One more though. Big guys who can give Wisconsin trouble inside. I think that should be thrown in there.
Where are we throwing that in? We throwing that in at? Do you want to push anything down the list, or do you want to put it at 4?
I'll put big guys at I'll put number 1 3-point shooting, number 2 turnovers, number 3 big guys.
Okay, all right,
We'll
sounds good. All right, good.
Okay. The free throw shooting record, yes, it belongs to Villanova from a couple years ago.
83%.
83%. For the longest time, it belonged to Harvard, which held the record in the 80s. And it was 82.3% or something like that. And I always thought that was super cool. Would have made for a good story if Wisconsin was going to break a record that was that old. And now it's only a couple years old from Villanova. I think there was another team that year that was somewhere around the record too. So that's the record.
That's what the record is. And Wisconsin currently is shooting 83.4% after last night. I think they get it done. I do. Here's the top 5 all time. I guess top 4 because they have Wisconsin at the top right now. But Villanova at 83%, Harvard at 82.2%, Oral Roberts from 2021 went 82%, 82.1%, and then Villanova a couple years ago was at 82%. So Villanova holds 2 of the top 5 spots right now. I guess 2 of the top 4 spots right now, including number 1 until the end of this season, whether Wisconsin holds on and does break it. But it's just a ridiculously huge advantage. Go look at last night's game. Go look at what happened between the 2 teams at the free throw line. Wisconsin went 21 of 24. Minnesota went 8 for 15. So they had that big of an advantage, and they win by 7. I think last night's game, if Minnesota's the worst free throw shooting team in the Big Ten, so it's not like it's a surprise that they shot that. But Wisconsin is such a huge advantage, and we know this because we've seen a lot of bad free throw shooting teams from Wisconsin, and how difficult that can be. I shouldn't say teams; it's players that drag down the total. Right in this season, John Tonje has picked it up, and when he's shooting 91%, and he's the one that's going to the line by far the most, your team percentage can be pretty high. But I don't know if there's anybody you sit there and say, I don't want them taking free throws on this team, right?
Yeah.
For the most part.
Good about this group.
For the most part. Because Blackwell's at 80%, Nolan Winters at 77%, Klesmit's at 84%, Krau's at 81%, Kamar McGee's at 84%, Carter Gilmore's at 78%. I mean, they just have everybody that really, really shoots it well from the line. And John Tonje, obviously at the top of that at 91.8. He's going to likely set the record, the school record for free throw percentage. There's only 3 guys that have actually shot over 90% at Wisconsin: Bronson Koenig and Brian Good. Did not know that name until I was looking it up a couple weeks ago. So either way, last one. Badger Ball asks, is this team good enough to beat any of the potential number 1 seeds, assuming it's Duke, Auburn, Florida, or Houston? And which one do you think is the best matchup for Wisconsin?
I'm not going to lie and pretend like I know enough about those teams to say what the matchups would be. I do think this Wisconsin team is good enough to beat anybody in the country. I also think, I don't know how many dominant teams there are. And that plays a role in it too, that I think these top teams are beatable when Wisconsin plays its best. So we've seen it. I know Purdue was in the midst of a losing streak, but you went on the road, and at the time, Purdue was a top 10 team very early in the season. But what they did against Arizona, they've beaten some really good teams. So I think they're capable of it, and that's why they've got a chance here in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting one. I don't know that I would pick them against any of them.
No, but that's different from are they capable of beating them? I mean, I think we've seen some Wisconsin teams where you're like, well, they don't have enough offense, or like, this team's going to play real good defense and muck it up and all those things. I think this team can beat you in a number of ways.
Trying to think of the ones that you would, because you could get in a potential shootout with Wisconsin's offense. You could get in a potential shootout with one of these teams, and I don't know which one you would most want to get in a shootout with. I mean, obviously, the way that Houston plays, like usually you think of Houston defensively, but they're efficiency wise, they're a top 10 offense in the country. So I mean, Auburn has the lowest defensive efficiency rating, but they're 14th. So it's not like it's not like there's any easy thing here for any team, or even like which team you might think they have the best chance against. That's tough. That is tough. I mean, they have 2 players of the year. I guess whichever one ends up winning it, whether it's Cooper Flagg or Broom at Auburn, you have players of the year on both those teams, and both of them are bigs, but also especially Cooper can go and do wherever and whenever he wants. So I don't know. That's a tough matchup, and I would like to see it though. I wouldn't mind seeing Wisconsin and Duke, largely because of Concanepo, but that'd be interesting. I'd be a lot more interested to see that than having to see Wisconsin and Kansas or Wisconsin and Louisville, even though the storylines there on both of those would be pretty rich. And it's possible to happen because Kansas, the way that Kansas is playing, they're going to be a rather low seed in terms of like for them, with what Bill Self has done. But I mean, would AJ Story even get in that game? I don't even know if he would even play.
Not many
minutes. Be funny if he played. Meanwhile, Chucky just killing it.
Yeah.
Hit 37 last week. Dude's
yeah.
Very impressive. I think I asked you this maybe when we were on air last week when you came on the morning show. Maybe I asked somebody else either. I'll ask you. Would Wisconsin be better off with Chucky right now than they are?
Oh, you did ask me this question. Great question. It's hard to say they'd be a worse team with a guy who is giving you what he's giving. And I thought it was interesting. I know we talked about this on the morning show, but a colleague of mine wrote a story about Chucky Hepburn, and it's on The Athletic and the season that he's having at Louisville. A lot of it had to do with being willing to open up about some of the losses that he's had in his personal life, family, and friends. But he also talked about going to Louisville and some of the reasons why he did that. And he was looking for a school where he could like shoot more threes and play faster. And it's like, is right here in front of you. And also we know that there's more reasons than that because money was a significant factor there. But I
hundreds of thousands of reasons.
I think he'd be having a great season for Wisconsin too. Now, what I wonder is, would Wisconsin be better than 23-7 right now? And that's what it comes down to also in factoring like how much is a player worth? How many wins are they worth? I don't know if Wisconsin would have a better record. But I think most people would say like you'd like to have a Chucky Hepburn on your team as a 4-year starting point guard.
I don't think it makes him worse, but I also think, John Blackwell with what he's done this year, I don't know that he has that big of a jump this year. If he doesn't have the ball in his hands, right? Like if every time down, he's the one he's touching it and he's being able to create. I don't know that maybe he would, I don't know, but yeah. Chucky's so ball dominant that like I don't know. It's a tough one. I will say this. They do, I think defensively could definitely be better if they had him.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that John's not a good defender or some of the other guys that they have aren't good defenders, but Chucky on ball defending is maybe one of the best ever at Wisconsin.
Very,
Just
very
because
good.
he just gets up in your business and makes life difficult.
Yes.
And I've also heard, right, like if they had a true point guard, they wouldn't have all these turnovers at the end of the Oregon game and like the Maryland, whatever. Dude, did you watch the last game that Chucky played at Wisconsin? It was horrible. I mean, couldn't hold on to the ball. Like certain teams are going to get up you, and it's going to be a problem. I remember him crying in the locker room after the game about turning the ball over and be like, "That's not me. I don't do that." So he did it that game.
He did.
It's game by game. By game. Again, Wisconsin will take on Penn State coming up on Saturday, and we'll get a better idea of where and when the Badgers will play down in Indianapolis. But we'll do a show before that, heading into the Big Ten tournament, and obviously right after on Selection Sunday as well.
Before we go,
what? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm
getting my 2-minute Division III soapbox here because this is tangentially related to Wisconsin. Okay, it's about Jeff Gard, Greg Gard's brother at UW Platteville. If you are a basketball fan and you're in the state of Wisconsin or in the area, I strongly encourage you, if you have nothing to do, looking for a game, Friday night at UW Platteville is the start of the NCAA Division III tournament, and there's going to be 2 really great games. UW Platteville is 25-2. They are coming off an Elite 8 bid. They are a great team, and they're hosting Grinnell, which I wrote about pretty recently at The Athletic. They are the school that full court presses and shoots 53s a game, and they're second in the country in scoring at 111 points per game. It should be quite a spectacle. Grinnell's got 20 wins. It's the school record for them. I would love to be there in person. So that game is happening Friday night at Platteville. The other game is Wisconsin, Lutheran, and Calvin, 2 really good teams. Calvin and UW Platteville played in the season opener, and Platteville beat them by a point. So don't sleep on Division III NCAA tournament basketball. You should check it out at Platteville if you're able to. That's my D3 soapbox moment.
Nice. You played D3, correct?
I sure did. I don't know if it's come up yet.
How close did you get to the tournament?
Actually, so the reason I am so familiar with Grinnell in part is because they were a part of the same conference of where I played at Knox College in the Midwest Conference. And so since I probably wasn't academically capable of getting into Grinnell, the next best thing was being able to play them twice. My junior year in the conference tournament at our conference, you only get in the conference tournament if you're in the top 4, which to this day is preposterous. It was a 10-team league. I think it's a 19-team league now, but we finished 4th that year. So we made the conference semifinal and lost to Lawrence University in Appleton, which at the time was number 1 and the only remaining unbeaten team in any NCAA division. And Grinnell made it in there and lost to Carroll College. So that is the last time that Knox even qualified for the conference tournament. And that was 2006. So came within 2 games of the NCAA tournament, but it was never really that close. Anyway, you should check it out.
Should be a fun one. What night is that? Friday?
Yep.
Or Saturday?
Friday night.
Tomorrow night.
And then the second round is on Saturday.
Okay. All right. Well, it should be. We'll break that game down next week. All right. We'll talk about it.
We'll get to the tape.
Yeah, we will. We definitely will. All right, Jesse. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right. There he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Swing.